Resumes tell us where someone's been, but not always where they can go. What if the best candidate for your team isn't the one with the longest list of accomplishments, but the one with the drive, adaptability, and untapped skills to grow into the role? In this episode of the Work Sucks But I Like It podcast, we're going to explore how leaders can hire not just for experience, but for potential. But even if you aren't hiring anyone, in this episode, maybe you will start to look at your team a little differently, seeing their potential and not just what their job description tells you. And why is this all important? Because I get tired of hearing people tell me they've been doing work for 5, 10, 15 years, and my first thought is, have you been doing it right? And not to sound like a smartass, but unfortunately, I've worked with people before that have told me these fun statistics on their resumes. But I had an example once where the resume doesn't always align with the actual experience. So now I have a different perspective when I talk with someone about their work. This person, going back to that experience, claimed to be doing this work for over 20 years. At the time, we were both in the aerospace manufacturing industry, heat treating parts and vacuum furnaces. This person even made it a point that I didn't know anything when we were talking about a particular cycle to run, despite the fact I have my Bachelor of Science in Material Science Engineering. And then further proceeded to tell me about this equation he used for a critical calculation as to not vaporize chrome and nickel in a vacuum furnace. Well, this person used the equation wrong, and I showed this person with the simple use of a graph plotting vapor pressure and temperature of what would happen and the catastrophic effects it would have on the furnace and parts. The point is this: it's not that I don't think years of experience is important or higher degrees aren't important. In fact, they are. It shows how much you potentially learned and grown. This person had a PhD in material science and had valuable years of experience. But what I'm more interested in now, being on the other end of hiring potential candidates for the team today, is beyond what is on a person's resume. Not just how many years they've been doing something, but rather, what have they actually been doing all those years? It's the key values of attitude, team playing, and work ethic that I now look for when hiring someone. Now, unfortunately, organizations still lean so heavily on resumes when evaluating candidates. Why? Because they're easy to transact in their systems. Even the use of AI can now sort for keywords and eliminate candidates in the blink of an eye. What doesn't make sense to me, though, with any of this is that people are beyond the black and white letters on their resumes. There's a story that they have lived and are continuing to live and tell. Work is like a story with good and bad days. I want to hear more of how they navigate the difficult employees or handle the tough projects, not how many years they did something, and for that matter, if they were doing it right or wrong all that time. The resume, therefore, doesn't always paint the full picture with just achieving some position at a previous company or how they saved millions on a project. Because maybe they didn't do the work and took the credit. Maybe the position was attained by some sneaky stuff going on, who knows? But it's no different than the saying of don't judge a book by its cover when looking at someone's resume. So you can't judge someone based on their years of experience either. Because with my experience, as I shared earlier, the number of years of doing something doesn't always equate to someone actually doing that something. If I use a hammer as a screwdriver for 20 years, yeah, I've got lots of experience, but it's not necessarily a good experience. When I hire someone today, I am hiring them for their story, not just the stats they have properly memorized in an interview, nor the buzzwords they integrate in their carefully prepared interview answers, but more on how they use these stats to tell about the work they have done, the work they plan to do. That is what a company and a team really wants. Think of a sports team hiring on a new team player. This player has been in the league for years, and they were great at their last team. But that doesn't mean they're going to be great on the current team. The question becomes, what is their story and their potential now, in this very moment? Today, the company you work for is focused on the current problems and not the problems of that other company from years ago where this candidate came from. Because the interest now is, how are these candidates going to tackle these problems with the skills and experiences they have today? The biggest limitation of the resume today in truly understanding a person's abilities is that it doesn't tell in color, with feeling, and with detail all the little steps we sometimes take for granted as people hiring on. We assume they will fit in as we have placed an assumption as to who, what, and how they should act in the workplace. We assume they will know what to do because they have the previous experience. And in some instances, that is true. I needed to work at a small heat treat company in Ohio to implement what I did for a company in New Hampshire to put a brand new heat treat department in. But we can't assume because they drive a truck, they're going to be a great manager, or because they like golfing, they'll be great at motivating the team in their workplace. What attention do we now need to place on this person then? I want to hear about how they work at being a partner in the relationship, how they play with their kids or the hobbies they partake in. These indicate further into the values of what make up this person, beyond how they can push a button or move parts in the manufacturing process. Because my biggest fear with resumes is that they are unintentionally filtering out great talent. When you look for keywords and things to just satisfy your temporary problems you're working on, you're not looking to the future of the team. Again, keywords can be critical, but they don't add up to the entire picture of what is going on. So, why do managers hiring today just look for a perfect puzzle piece to fit their problem? Because it's easy to sell. It helps solve your immediate problems. Wishing for the perfect candidate is like wishing to win the lottery. There's a very small chance of you winning. Instead, I view the person that needs to be hired on as having some of the features the team needs in the missing puzzle piece of the work, but also the important consideration of also working with them to grow. Too often we hire to set this person in their job and forget they have the potential to grow. That is because this person isn't a robot and can do other things. So, what really needs to happen today is that managers and those hiring potential candidates for their teams need to look beyond the resume because skills can fade, but the potential of someone can grow. Think of the company you work for now. What have you seen fade and come into its place over the years? Maybe it was old equipment or software. Maybe it was just an old way of doing something. Maybe you even recognize something you once did when you started and now are doing something different. You changed, you grew. Companies will always need to grow to stay competitive in the market today. And I don't just mean in sales dollars and the size of the facility. There is a game I love to play for fun when I'm home. It's called Balloon Tower Defense. It's a game that I played for many years on my tablet. It's on like version 6, and I played all of them since the beginning at version 1. Basically, the game requires strategically placing monkeys, yes, you heard right, with special abilities of shooting darts or bombs to pop the advancing balloons of different types in the track of varying difficulties. And you might find that hilarious at first and outrageous, which of course it is, but there's a certain strategy that must be developed in order to beat this game. Number one, it begins with the selection and placement of the monkeys. This is critical, and if I filter out a monkey because I don't think this monkey has the potential to pop a certain balloon type, well, I'm going to fail the game. Number two, it then requires dedication of training this monkey, even when they join my team to take on the balloons that are advancing. I have to invest money and upgrade their skills to meet the demands at the current level. And it's the combination of these two things. And when I strategically place the monkeys, knowing their potentials at specific points in the track, that I'm able to win the game. As you can begin to see, this is no different than hiring people onto your team. You must strategically pick them and place them in the company to help the company win. But you also can't neglect them. You have to invest in them to be their fullest potential. Now, these monkeys don't start out very great when they first start in the game. Even the more advanced ones, like the wizard and super monkey, despite what their credentials look like on paper, you have to let them get experience on the job, as they say. You have to still invest some money so they can upgrade their skills. And once again, it's no different than hiring someone. Despite the fact they have years' experience or whatnot, you still need to let them get on the job experience in their new role. Because just like in the game with different maps, some of these monkeys thrive in some settings and not necessarily in others. One of my favorite monkeys in the game, though, is the engineer, for obvious reasons, of course, with myself being an engineer. But I love the upgrade paths when I first select and place this particular monkey on the track. Essentially, I love the potential this monkey can be depending on where I put them on the track or the training and skills I've upgraded. The first potential path is that this monkey can create little towers around itself to pop balloons in a bigger radius and of various types, lead, frozen, and so on. I think of it as a potential manager, being able to place other employees in the right areas around them. As you level up in this path, the monkey not only gets stronger, but so do the towers around them. A good manager to look for is the one that wants to grow, but also wants the team to grow as well around them. The engineer monkey has another path as well that can help other monkeys be powerful with the skills they already have. It greatly increases the firing rate for a certain amount of time. I think of this as like someone working in human resources, encouraging employees to develop their skills and empowering them on the job. You're all about making the employees be powerful in their roles by giving them the time and resources to get their work done. The last potential path for this engineer monkey is that it can create traps for the balloons and generate more money. This reminds me of the role of quality. Quality managers like myself and quality engineers are constantly trying to put systems in place to catch defects from going out the door and saving money. So, just like the engineer monkey being able to place traps along certain points in the map to catch balloons, quality engineers are placing procedures and processes to check and catch defects of parts or services going to the customer. If this hasn't inspired you to play this amazing game, I don't know what will, but if you never decide to play this amazing game, the takeaway is this. Regardless of whether I'm playing this game or doing the work I now do, it's about looking for potential in people and asking where can I put them in the company, but also not forgetting to invest in them to upgrade, to grow. So, in essence, this game has taught me that hiring people is just like placing the monkeys on the map. I have to identify what is needed, where I need to place them. Do I need a water based or land based type of monkey? Can they adapt to the different balloons that come their way? What skills do they have or need to be able to solve the dreaded purple camel lead hearted shaped balloon? Do I need to generate a banana farm to get them the cash to be able to upgrade, aka spend money on training to level them up? So, when thinking about hiring people, we need to identify more important qualities like adaptability, resilience, and problem solving, as they don't always show up on their resume. We need to see these people as the potential to grow along certain pathways in their careers. We need to see also how they're going to take on challenges of the current game they're playing and not just reminisce about their past experiences for doing it for 20 years and potentially the wrong way. In fact, sometimes I don't mind seeing someone bouncing around at different places on the resume. It could be a sign that they can possibly adapt, moving from one company to another. But if I hear why they are bouncing because they're being let go or quitting because they're giving up, well, that's a different story. See how the resume can be so limiting sometimes or insightful? Hiring for potential is not for necessarily trying to fit a perfect puzzle piece into an existing gap of the company. Instead, it's about seeing this puzzle piece having the ability to meet some of the gaps needed, but also the ability to potentially adjust along the way. Interestingly enough, the interview process in hiring candidates is not effective, according to the psychology literature in industrial organizational psychology, which some of you know I'm getting my PhD in. Instead, they suggest the use of potential testing as ways of predicting success or failure. But for today's episode, let's just roll with the use of classical interviews as our tool for potential beyond the resume. So, one favorite set of questions I'd like to ask are, what is one thing that you currently do not like at your place and why? Then my follow up to that question to this person is, what can you do now to help turn it into something better? I like these two questions because they test two things. The first is that we all know work can suck at times. But how are they talking about it? Are they shit talking the other people? Can they be mature about it? Their answers provide insight as to the level of crap they can just stand at work. Another what I will call pro tip is in recognizing how they present the problem. Maybe they can add a little constructive humor to the true gravity of the situation. Then I really know they have thought this through and are putting in the effort. Then the follow up question is critical, as it then points out their ability to recognize the opportunities for change. Can they seize an action in this moment? Or do they use an excuse of, well, my boss won't let me, or it's not my job? And if they say something like that, it's a coaching moment for me to say, well, you can still make a difference even at your level. And I might make a mental note that this person might not be what we're looking for. So, work will always present challenges. Employees need a certain set of skills to take on those challenges. The other reason why I like this question is that it gives me insight as to how change is managed at the company where they're coming from. And even within this person, when certain challenges need to be overcome or skills need to be developed. Change, to be honest, should be started at the bottom of any company and upper management supporting it at the company. Why? Because in manufacturing, it's the people on the floor that perform the work, not the people in the office. They support those on the production floor. So, change at the personal level requires acknowledging what needs to change and acting and taking responsibility to do it. In their response, I listen to whether they take initiative in making change. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, this is all great when I'm interviewing someone. I've read enough books and articles and heard from HR of what questions to ask. I want to hear how it really works when hiring someone. Well, I actually have a couple of examples of people who didn't look good on paper, but became actually a standout hire using the principles and approaches and the questions I just described. In both instances, these people had no experience in the areas they had entered. I won't repeat their names, but we'll use Bob and Ellen for the story. The first instance was when Bob knew nothing about heat treat. He didn't know what the term pyrometry was in heat treat. He had worked in the restaurant industry prior to manufacturing, where the equivalent of heat treat was tied to the kitchen's ovens that cooked the food. But I could sense that Bob was open to learning. He was good with people. He liked the discipline of having what I will call a menu to pick from and recipes to run in the furnaces. So Bob was actually in a fortunate spot at the time in the company, as the heat treat department was brand new. We were actually creating it. I told the team that what we discuss and put in place today is the process we create for the future. Now, I always want the team involved in whatever I do. So here Bob was, no experience with heat treat, but asking questions every day. Asked me for resources so he could read at home and study up. He had such a great attitude for learning. This had actually inspired me to create an in-house heat treat training to explain the principles of phase diagrams and TTT curves, the technical tools I've used over the years with the actual equations, by the way, to fight scary crow monsters. So then Bob took it to another level. This thing called pyrometry and heat treat in the aerospace manufacturing industry is basically a set of requirements that need to be performed on heat treat ovens that process parts that go into planes. It's technical, it's dense, and it's great for putting people to sleep at night. Now, I wasn't an expert at the time in tuning furnaces, and I've realized as a manager of projects and people that the goal isn't to be an expert in everything, even as a manager, but to know where to put the monkeys and develop them to be the best they can be on the track in the company. And by the way, when I use the word monkey, remember in Bloom's TD, these monkeys kick ass. We aren't just monkeying around here. So Bob took this opportunity and ran with it. We needed to tune these furnaces and get them to meet these pyrometry requirements, these technical requirements. So he studied at home, he came to work with questions, and this again even further prompted me to create a basic PID tuning training. And it was such a fun time because the momentum of learning was fueled by this excitement of bringing this department alive. Although, like I mentioned, I wasn't an expert nor claim to be one even now, with years of still working with them. But I have learned years ago from college that teachers need to be 3 steps ahead of the students. And what that really meant to me was 3 questions ahead of what might potentially be asked. So when I set up these trainings, I always try and do my research, learn the basics to set the framework for our discussions, and just really be kind of 3 questions ahead of what might be asked. I didn't have to be the expert. I just had to realize that I was there to facilitate the growth of Bob. So I gave him the key words and things to consider, and he had those furnaces tuned right in. And again, here was an employee, if you saw his resume, he worked at a restaurant all these years prior to entering the manufacturing world. And in the span of 1 to 2 years, he was becoming a pyrometry expert and knowledgeable heat treat operator who could actually talk in terms of basic thermodynamics and kinetics while working with other process engineers. Now, he didn't stand out on paper in his resume for his heat treat skills, and why would he have? What stood out was his story. He had the potential to grow, and he wanted to, and he did. Ellen is another example of someone who came into the organization with no skills in the area, where I needed a person on the team. She had actually just been fired from her previous job, and one might think that she was a failure. I was actually called a failure in a job interview once for dropping out of grad school. But I know life happens, and my first thought was not her being a failure, but rather, what is her character now with showing up to this next chapter in her life? Was she going to complain about the last place and dwell on that and limit her growth forward, or take these critical lessons and grow her career from there? So I hired her on. And again, because I could hear potential, I could hear teamwork, I could hear hard work. These values I want more than shiny and polished bullet points telling me about AS9100 or NADCAP skills, which she did not have. So here comes Ellen. She starts working in inspection. She knows nothing about what she's doing in this particular department. She's actually doing really well in it, asking questions, learning, growing into something she knew nothing about months before. And then one day an opportunity comes. It's a different one. It was the Department of FPI. Aerospace loves all these acronyms for some reason, by the way. So FPI stands for Fluorescent Penetrant Inspection. This was basically another position in the company. And it was a chance for her to grow into a path, if you will, and now to actually really level up, literally, as there are different levels 1, 2, and 3. Now, of course, you can hear the nerd in me thinking about Bloom's tower defense and leveling her up. Now, she knew nothing about this new role, just like the position she was hired into, but she saw the opportunity and I saw her enthusiasm towards it. We talked as a team and she started to work there in this new particular role in FBI. This new job actually required taking exams, logging hours to earn first year level one, and then within the span of about half a year, she became not just a level one FBI operator, but a level two. She exceeded the initial goal of being one and shot for two. I'm excited to continue to support her growth in our team today. So it comes down to something critical in the interview, knowing what tools or interview techniques are going to reveal potential beyond the technical skills. The tools of what questions to ask, like what are you frustrated about at your current job and what might you do to change it? Not what is a weakness of yours. That is such a dumb question. That is too corporate asking and wanting a black and white transaction in their system. Instead, we must use and develop the techniques of learning how to engage with people and to ask them about their story, not just read polished bullet points in their resume, to look for potential. Not just summarize an employee with some stupid 10 to 30-second, tell me about yourself elevator speech. I hate those too, if you can tell already, those elevator pitches. It reminds me of the Marvel character Groot. When talking, all he says is, I am Groot. Tell me about yourself, Groot. I am Groot. Tell me the work you've done at your past job. I am Groot. What is one weakness of yours? I am Groot. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, Groot? I am Groot. Now, you can clearly see that people aren't just three words. They are more than that. And so I hate this question of what do you do for work? I am Tony, is what I should start responding. Because people are husbands, there's wives, there's a story, like I said before, with these people's lives coming into the workplace. They are epic toy collectors, they're golfers, they're skiers, they're hikers, they're artists. We are so fixated on transacting things in corporate America, where even our interactions with human beings has become so mechanized. But something needs to shift in order to start seeing it like this, to get off this elevator and get onto the floor where the action is really taking place in work today. So, what needs to shift? It's the simple fact we are hiring from strictly credentials and not along with capability. That is what needs to change. Now, I'm not saying hire someone who won't have the potential to fit the role. That's like taking LeBron James, a basketball player, and trying to make him a horse jockey. There's an art to looking for credentials in someone as well as looking for potential. I think what needs to be considered in the workplace is to really start understanding what the values are. What does the company value? That is, do they want employees who are willing to sacrifice their weekends and work overtime as they value the paycheck? Do they want employees who are willing to do one task alone? Or is there an expectation that they can multitask or grow into other positions? You will never know this, of course, until you hire them. And I've actually had instances sometimes, even with all my techniques and skills and approaches of looking at people as potential, I haven't made selections that have been correct or have worked out. But it's hard to assess someone from their piece of paper in a 1 hour interview. And that's the point I'm trying to make. It's not easy, but it's critical. And when that did actually happen to me in the instance of me hiring this person on and it didn't work out, I had to adjust my own expectations, realizing this person wasn't going to cut it. And I guess at the end of the day, I'm an optimist in that I still see potential in people and try to continue to work with this person, to make it work. But in some cases, I have had to let people go from the team because they were not making the cut. I remember telling one particular person why they weren't making it. I told them the skills they needed to develop before we let this person go. And actually, a cool story is that in this particular instance, this operator actually messaged me the other day saying how they got back into the team after they developed skills. So, how cool is that, right? So, people can grow and have the potential. It's important for managers and company leaders to see that and provide the resources for the team to really thrive. Again, it's capability, not always credentials, that is going to allow you to make the right hires and build a successful team. One growing area of conversation in hiring today that I just want to touch upon in this episode, because I think it's important, is that of diversity and non traditional career paths. So let's talk diversity first. So, like, we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, nor should we obviously be judging what someone looks like and relating that to how they will show up for work. I remember having a supervisor once with a piercing in his mouth. Everyone would comment and even ask me, what I thought about it being his manager. And he was actually the best supervisor I had at the time, and his team did the best in terms of performance. I didn't necessarily care what he looked like, I wanted results. Now, he also wore all the correct PPE, by the way. Now, if there was a customer coming in, yeah, he would dress appropriately, but still kept his piercing. Times are changing as to what is expected of employees. I have tattoos, and I once rocked a mohawk, in the workplace. I remember playing golf one time and got nasty looks when I had my, mohawk from others with the way I presented myself beyond the collared shirt and nice slacks and golf shoes. But crazy enough, after the round, this is still weird even today as I talk about it. This random foursome came up to me after and said how they watched me during the round of golf and were impressed at how I played. And the point is, that in some instances, it doesn't matter what you look like. It matters how you show up, how you play the game. So, how are the people you are hiring going to show up each day beyond the way they dress and look? The second is non traditional career paths. And I hate being asked, where do I see myself in 5 years? As in the ridiculous example of Groot earlier. But if you further think about this question, it's even more absurd because 5 years ago, I could not have predicted where I am today, and nor should I have to. When there is potential, there's no particular equation for how it will look other than providing the necessary resources for someone to grow. Take the example of an acorn. It has the potential to grow into a tree. Ensuring that you put them in the right spot to grow, of course. You give them sunlight and nutrients and some water, and this acorn is going to grow. But look at every tree around in the forest. They're all different. We couldn't predict how the branches will look as there are so many factors involved with growth. Kids playing on the branches, for example, and one breaks off, or a storm comes and the wind pushes the tree sideways, or maybe the sun is shining on one side, making that grow more than the other, and so on. People are going to grow in different ways as well. And the traditional career path of climbing the corporate ladder is outdated. Why? Well, first I tried to climb it and then got fired. I talked about this in my first book, The Impression of a Good Life, Finding Your Song and Dance. And the reason being was that I placed my idea of value in the wrong things. I valued a title and paycheck when in essence my firing was a result of me straying from the values I wanted to uphold in my everyday life. So all of this leads to the important decision of leaders balancing the need for proven skills with the risk of taking a chance on potential when hiring. How can they look at a resume and make the right decision to hire this person as they see growth? Is the idea of growth an illusion or fantasy in your mind? Can it be a reality? I think a lot of it comes down to expectations. When hiring, you need to really assess the position at hand. If I'm hiring for an operator on the floor, it's going to be different than me hiring someone for an engineering position. But the strategy is the same. You still look for potential and capability. Of course, the foundation for which you expect an engineer compared to a floor operator might start a little differently. Maybe you want the formal education so you can talk the proper lingo. But be careful, as we've learned that even with a PhD, people still can't use the technical equations right. So don't judge a book by its cover for anyone. So let's wrap this episode up today with a question. If you had to hire someone tomorrow without looking at their resume, what one question would you ask to assess their potential? Think about how you might answer it. Maybe share it with me in an email or comment on social media. Also, please write a review if you have found value in today's episode and indicate your takeaways from the show. It helps me keep exploring the potential of this show. But for me getting back to this question, if I were answering this, it would be to ask them, what inspires you to show up each day to work? Because this answer could tell me a few things. Are they supporting a family? Maybe they love the challenges the work presents and can find states of flow. And with that, remember, success is not about good luck, it's good skills. So the skill today is to remember that when looking at potential candidates, you're looking at hiring the story and not just the stats. That potential doesn't just fit onto one page. There is potential for people to grow. And with that, hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for the next episode, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Like everywhere we go, we hear people complain about people that they don't know. Now even neighbors becoming strangers when you don't look them in the eyes. But when's the last time that you made a friend? A broke bread with your countrymen?